Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Day in the Life of podcast. It's Eve
and Payden,
and we're so excited today. We got a lot planned up for you guys. First, I think we're gonna kind of share how our week's been and how our new things are going. So, Payden, did you have any?
I'm doing pretty good.
Events?
I feel like I've added more things into like spending time with Caleb because it's funny. Like it's when you start doing things, you end up wanting to do more things. And so instead of waking up at 5:30, I've actually been waking up at 5 o'clock.
Wow.
Yeah. So that 5:30 has now been able to progress to 5, and I've been able to make Caleb breakfast, and it's really nice to get to spend that time together in the mornings because I feel like in the afternoons you've already had your bad days and you've already like had all that stuff going on, but in the mornings you can just spend time together and relax. And so sometimes I've turned on like a sermon and stuff and just lay there and watch that. Slept on the reading. I've not finished a book yet. But I still have another week. That's okay. So yeah, we're doing pretty good.
Okay, we all got hills and valleys. I've done great at praying before I get on my phone. I've also done okay at getting up. I've gotten up at 6:30 or 6:45 every single day. And then I've very slacked on the phone situation. I actually don't think I said this last week, but that was one of my other things that I was going to try and do is cut out scrolling time, like just mindless scrolling.
For entertainment.
Yeah. It's been a lot harder than I thought it would be. And I don't know why. I think it's because on my days off, I have nothing to do. But I'm going to start changing that and trying to find other things to do. Did good on my laundry. Still have to do Tanner's.
Was Tanner thanking us yet?
Not yet. No. I only did it one time this week, and then he said he was going to do it last night. I wasn't home last night, but I don't know if he did it or not. We'll see when I get home. But thinking of that, I did my laundry yesterday and folded it as soon as it got out of the dryer. I was very proud of myself. So we got some improvements to make, but we're also still doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I hope y'all are doing good too. It's been adventurous. We're excited. We only have 2 weeks left, and then we'll be kind of done with this series for now and with our second 21 days. So
it's gone by kind of fast, but I feel like it's also been slow. Every morning I'm like, this is terrible. But no, I feel like it definitely has helped me throughout the day have a better day.
Yeah. I think also too, not only does it help us, it kind of helps the other people around us. Like you were saying, like it kind of brings Caleb joy. And when I do Tanner's laundry, it brings him a little bit more joy. So not only is it affecting our lives, it is affecting others. So we talked a little bit about that last week about, how important community is. And, you work on yourself to help others in the community and, to grow God's kingdom.
Yeah. But that's kind of the main thing that we wanted to talk about today was not necessarily how other people can help us, but how can what we're either doing help other people, or how do we help hold our friends accountable? Because that could totally be one of our goals, is to bring people closer. Because we've talked before about how like you might be the closest thing that somebody ever sees to Jesus.
Yeah.
Or just you love these people and you want them to be with you forever. So like I saw something today that said that it was just like there's so many people in hell right now just because of pride, because they didn't want to admit that Jesus was their savior. But it's just like they didn't have people around them telling them it was okay. They didn't have people being like, oh, well, that's not you, that's God. And they didn't have someone sitting there and explaining to them the goodness of God. Yeah, that stuff. And so, we wanted to talk a little bit about being a good friend and just being a loyal confidant or something like that. And so it was kind of crazy because I watch mainly 2 sermons that I like. Those are my sermons that I watch each week, and that's Crosspoint and Life Church. Both of them were talking about Ruth. So I was like, okay. And did you have the note of what Ruth means, the name?
Ruth means the compassionate friend.
Yeah, so that went perfectly hand in hand with what we wanted to talk about. So the story about Ruth, for those who might not know, it was I feel like it was like a refresher for me.
Yeah.
So there was Naomi and her husband's name was Elimelech. Elimelech is the husband. they had lived in Israel. And no, was it Bethlehem?
Yeah, they lived in Bethlehem, which is, I mean, it's in Israel,
Okay,
right?
okay.
Maybe not. I could be wrong.
We'll go with Bethlehem. But I had marked down, you can always go back to Israel. So I feel like it was in the point somewhere. Somewhere. Okay. So they lived in Bethlehem, and this was at the time after Judges rule. And so basically the world was in shambles because, you can't, it doesn't work that as smoothly if you're having a bunch of people in charge, I feel like, than if you have a dictatorship. And that sounds like not necessarily a dictator.
There's one main person in charge.
Yeah, like one main person. People need boundaries and they need like a set of rules to follow. And so there was a famine going on in Bethlehem, and they were explaining that Moab is where they had said that it would, God had said that it was his wash basin. Like it was the worst of the worst. It was where like incest was going on. The God that they worshiped, it was like they sacrificed children to this God. And it was just everything that the Lord is against is what was in Moab. So he did not want any of his children to go move there. And so Elimelech moved his family. So him and Naomi had 2 sons. And they moved them when the famine was going on to Moab, naturally, as people do. We sit there and we think that we know what's best rather than what God's word says or what God's telling us to do. We take things upon ourselves and we kind of remove him from the throne of our life whenever it's convenient or whenever we like put him up whenever we think that he can take care of it. But if he's not working fast enough, then we'll remove him off of the seat.
I saw something this week too. It was like, sometimes we think the Lord can't handle our earthly battles. Like he can't control what happens to natural earthly things. Like he's crazy. Yeah. Like we sometimes in our mind think he has no control over this when in reality he has total control. And so I think that kind of goes hand in hand with this story too.
I think about that all the time when I'm like doing something at work. I'm like, Lord, I pray that email says this certain wording. And I'm like, he can't go back and change the email.
But he could if he wanted to. That was my thing, like last season about the mail.
Yeah, like you can't change that.
But he did.
But Elimelech moved Naomi and the boys to Moab, and the boys ended up marrying Moab women, and that was Ruth and Orpah. You want to say Oprah, the way it's spelled, but it's not. It's Orpah. And so basically what happens is the father dies, the sons die, and it's just Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth. Well, Orpah is like, peace out. I'm going to stay in my homeland and I'm going to marry someone, because they also explained that it's so much harder for women that are foreign to move somewhere and get married, because one, in that time, if you were already previously married, you weren't a virgin anymore. So you had that rooting against you. Plus, nobody knows your family. Nobody knows where you're from. They're not going to inherit wealth if they marry you or decide to do anything. But then there's also just like, you're from Moab.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like they like thought women from Moab were unclean.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for Ruth and Orpah to move from their homeland was like a big risk almost, and it was kind of scary.
Yeah. So Orpah stayed and she didn't want to be with Naomi, but Naomi was saying that she was leaving. She says, go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dear husband and me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home and another husband. She kisses them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, we will go back with you, your people. But Naomi said, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? I'm not going to have any more sons. Who could become your husband? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and they gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grow up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me.
Which is so crazy that it's like such foreshadowing too. Like
Yeah.
it's like the Lord is kind of like, oh, but just wait, like just watch because I'm gonna make something even greater. You're not even gonna know what's gonna hit you.
And it's like Naomi's automatically doing what we all do and saying like, oh, pity me. Like the Lord is against me. The Lord's not against you. You disobeyed everything he stood for and decided to leave his promised land and you're going to um Moab where he has specifically forbid
Yeah,
his people from going to because it was unclean.
which is kind of funny too. It kind of just shows you that God always makes a miracle out of our messes.
Yeah.
Which is so cool because you can never really mess up God's plan if you're, still kind of relying on him, even though you may turn down a bad path. If you cling to him and let him be your guide, like he's not gonna mess it up.
Mm.
And I think Sadie Robertson says that all the time, which I think is it's just so important because even though you mess up, you're never too far gone, and like the Lord's gonna make something amazing out of it.
Right. So it says, at this they wept aloud again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. When Naomi realized what Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the woman exclaimed, can this be Naomi? Don't call me Naomi, she told them. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth, the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. So they've made it back, and Naomi's just upset. Yeah, she moved away, she lost her husband, and she lost both of her sons. And so now not only is she taking care of herself, but she feels like responsible for Ruth because Ruth was her daughter-in-law, and now she doesn't have any sons to take care of Ruth, and Ruth is following her because that was her family. And so Ruth is about to meet Boaz, and in chapter 2 it said, now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And this, they explained that like a man of standing meant it's also that he's strong, but it didn't necessarily mean that he was like tall and strong. It just meant that he had money and he was like a man of righteousness and he just cared for people, I guess. It wasn't that he was physically strong. It was that he had all of the good qualities that make up a man. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. They explained that this was also a thing because the Lord had told them that kind of the same as like us tithing, it's the reverse is like whenever you're harvesting your crop, if something drops, you're not supposed to pick it up. You're supposed to leave it for somebody that's in more need than you to come back and find. So that's where the widowers and all the misfortunates would come and they would be able to not starve because that would be like the Lord blessing them.
Yeah, that's where it's so important where Boaz comes in. And
so Naomi said to her, go ahead, my daughter. So she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Just then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. The Lord be with you. The Lord bless you, they answered. Boaz asked the overseer of his harvest, who does that young woman belong to? The overseer replied, she is a Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. So Boaz said to Ruth, my daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field and don't go away from here. Stay with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I've told the men not to lay a hand on you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and drink from the water jars the men have filled." At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. She asked him, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you've noticed a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you didn't know before. May the Lord repay you with what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord and the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Um, and that's so amazing because we're talking about how much of a great friend Ruth is. But what about Boaz? It's just somebody that he's meeting off the street, and he's like, he pities her and he wants to protect her because he sees the character of the person that she is, because she's left everything that she's known and she's followed her family and she's being a loyal person. And so he's trying to protect her.
Yeah. I also like kind of what you brought up before we even started about how Boaz greeted all of the harvesters by saying, "Lord be with you."
Yeah.
And that just kind of shows his character as well.
Yeah.
And it just really shows like the Lord has blessed him, so he wants to bless others. And it's so important that we see that in him, because not only is he nice to everyone else, he's nice to Ruth, the foreigner.
Yeah.
And, he's nice because she was considered unclean coming from Moab. Like, it just really shows his character and like how the Lord was using him and Ruth at the same time.
May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my Lord, she said. You have put me at ease by speaking kindly to your servant, though I do not have the standing of one of your servants. At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here, have some bread, and dip it in the wine vinegar." She sat down with the harvesters. He offered her some roasted grain. She ate all that she wanted and had some left over. That is amazing, and I feel like it shows how much God is capable of, because she went from picking up scraps to sitting down and being with the man that's allowing her to eat whatever she wants, and she eats so much that she has stuff left over.
Yeah.
And that's just such a good parallel to what we ask from for God, or like where we are. And we have such small dreams when you think about it. Like the things that we want are so superficial and so unimportant, but he just multiplies everything.
Yeah. Well, you think about it even further, like she was literally from Moab. She worshiped gods and she came from a city with idols and they sacrificed children. Like, you don't expect something good to come out of that. And, when we get to the end of the story, you're really gonna, if those of you that haven't read it, you're really gonna see how big our God is, because like not only did she come from that, she's considered unclean, she's considered unholy, she worshiped other gods, but she chose and uprooted herself, left her home to move in with her mother-in-law, and now she's found this man who treats her better than she could ever imagine.
Yeah. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to kind of skim. Basically, she ends up telling Naomi about this, and then Naomi's like, "You need to go get him." Yeah, go get your man. Because Naomi realizes like how big of a deal this is, that she didn't even think that it was possible for Ruth to find favor in anyone, but specifically somebody that's already from the family and actually is a man of standing. She's like, "You need to lock this down right now."
Yeah.
So I'm skipping to chapter 3, and it is chapter 3:10, and it says, "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor, and now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I." So, Pastor Kevin at Crosspoint was explaining that back in the day, if there was a relative that was closer, then they would have claim over the property before Boaz would have. And so before Boaz went and married Ruth and tried to buy the property or like acquire the property because of Ruth, he had to make sure with the one that was first in line that it was okay, because he's a man that he's righteous and he cares about doing things the proper way, in the way that of the law, because you think about like, I feel like sometimes as Christians, we don't necessarily think about the law being that important, but God tells us to follow our leaders of power.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if it's something that's so terrible, like
If it goes against God's
if
word.
it goes against God's word, don't do it. But for the most part, you're just supposed to follow what
You're supposed to be
the
righteous.
Yeah, you're supposed to be righteous and you're supposed to follow the law because he's allowed those people to be in power.
Yeah.
So these laws, even though they're like outdated for now the times, it was right back then. And so Boaz wants to make sure that that's okay. And he says, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. And she said, no one must know that a woman has come to the threshing floor. He also said, bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out. When she did, she poured it into 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town. So again, he's giving her more as she's leaving him. When Ruth came home to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, how did it go, my daughter? She told her everything Boaz had done for her and added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for this man will not rest until the matter is settled today. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat there as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, come over here, my friend, and sit down. So he went and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, sit here, and they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of the seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, so, but if you will not, tell me so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line. I will redeem it, he said. Then Boaz said, on the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. At this, the guardian redeemer said, then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and the transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, buy it yourself, and he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all of the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses. Then the elders said, all the people at the gate, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, together built up a family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephraim, and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives, you may by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore of Judea.
I also think that's so cool too, because not only like did the Lord's plan work out in the end, like he's had to go through so many steps to make sure that, things happened when they happened. He had to go through the next in line. And at first he said he wanted it, but then, he kind of found out what came with it. And so he was like, never mind. But that just kind of shows you how God works and just how like something so big can be changed because of God's grace.
And it's like, if that was us, if we were Boaz and we were in love with Ruth and we wanted to marry her, we would not be doing it the right way.
No.
We would not be asking that. We would not ask the original guardian who was supposed to come and take it. We would just be selfish and we would try and do it on our own. But Boaz was a man of the Lord, and he knew that if that was what was supposed to happen, it would happen.
Yeah, and I think the Lord blesses that. Like the Lord's going to bless what's righteous. Like
Right.
if you are following his word and, listening to God and always making sure you're putting others before yourself, God's going to bless that. Like, and it shows it right here that he does.
It's also so crazy to mention that from this lineage, Jesus came.
Yeah. So that was the big thing at the end. I don't know if you were going to read the last,
Yeah,
the
you can read
last,
it if you want to.
it doesn't matter. Um, so it's Ruth 4, verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. When he made love to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than your 7 sons, has given him birth." Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The woman living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David, which is literally in line of Jesus, which is so cool. And then the genealogy of David is the next thing, and it says on verse 18, this then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Amminadab. I don't know how to say that. Amminadab is the father of Naasson. Naasson, the father of Salmon. Oh, is that Salmon?
I think most of the time they say it's Solomon.
Salmon. Salmon, the father of Boaz. Boaz, the father of Obed. Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of David. And then later on down, we know that's they're ancestors of Jesus. And so what I thought was so cool at the end of the story, like Naomi was so upset and so distraught that, she had nothing, that the Lord did not bless her with anything. Like she came back to her homeland, she felt empty handed. And like little did she know what the Lord was going to do. Same thing for Ruth, even though she was, raised as a Moab, unclean and not worthy, quote unquote. And like God made a miracle out of her mess.
Yeah, and I think it proves those like one decisions. You know what I mean? Like if Ruth would have stayed, then this wouldn't have happened. And like God has a plan for us, but we also have free will. And so it's up to us to actually be obedient to God, even though he knows what's going to happen at the end of the day. It's not his job to change our mind and make us be robots that do exactly what his greatest plan would be. It's up to us to actually ask him and pray to him and have a relationship to know what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. And that's kind of what shows like how powerful our God is. If he was just to let us, be robots and just kind of mind control, then what would be the point of him in the first place? Does that make sense? Like he could create us to do whatever we want, but it all goes back to him, and it just really shows his glory and just like shows how if we stand beside him and we walk with him, then we're always going to end up on the right path.
Right.
And the Lord's always got something way bigger in mind. Like Naomi had no idea that she would be an ancestry line with Jesus. Like it's so important to know too that Ruth came from an unclean, background, but she was an ancestor of Jesus, who is the most perfect human that ever walked the earth. And so it just kind of shows you like, holy cow, our God is big and he's so great.
It's also good to think about the fact that Ruth didn't let her past stop her from what she knew she needed.
Yeah.
Because she could have been like, no, I'm a Moabite woman. And I feel like a lot of us are like, no, Boaz would never want me. Like Boaz, he doesn't want me. He wants a girl that's different. He wants a girl that's never been married, and he wants someone from here. He wants someone that's on his same level. He wants someone of standing. He wants someone that has money. But you're never going to know unless you actually open yourself up to what the Lord has, because she didn't shut herself down. Naomi said go, so she went and she just did. She was loyal and she just obeyed everything that she was told to do, and it worked out for her. But if she would have started to get in her head, and if she would have listened to the enemy, because I'm sure the enemy was trying to put doubts in her mind.
Yeah.
And being like, oh no, you don't need to do that. You don't want him. And it said that a lot of women that were widows had to end up resorting to prostitution because they couldn't, like men didn't want them and they couldn't do anything to support themselves back then. So they had to resort to things like that. So I'm sure that like went through Naomi and Ruth's mind.
Oh, I'm sure. Because you think about our day and age, like how bad the enemy affects us. And like when we mess up, we're always like, well, I'm not capable of doing that because of what I have done. Like nobody would want me. I'm not worthy enough to, have this job, do this podcast, or whatever you want to do in life. Sometimes we hold ourselves back because we think of what we were instead of what we could become.
Yeah.
And it's so important that we really have to keep in the forefront of our mind that our mistakes don't define us, but God does.
Mhm.
God always gives us the final say. And no matter what you've done or what you will do, like that doesn't matter. God defines who you are. And, you find that out throughout your journey. And your mistakes are just as important as your victories because your mistakes kind of shape you and help you grow.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were talking about earlier. We were saying that I had watched a sermon that was talking about when he was a kid, he was really bad at math. And so he would be working in his workbook and he would be doing the homework. And one day his book just flew open to the last page and he found the answers. And so he started to get really good at turning in his homework and having a 100 on the top because he was cheating and he was just getting the answers. But the teacher pulled him aside and was like, I don't care if you're getting the right answers. The test is what's worth more. You know what I mean? Like if you're thinking about school, homework's normally like 20% participation and then tests are like 40%. And so it doesn't matter how good you do on the homework if you're just getting the answers, if you're not going to do well when the test comes. And I feel like that so can correlate with Jesus because Jesus doesn't care about necessarily just giving us the answers because we're always praying for answers, but he's more worried about us coming to him and having that relationship of us learning how to pray to him and learning how to ask for answers and learning how to hear his voice. Like the actual answers don't really matter to him.
Yeah.
It's the relationship that you're
Yeah.
building.
Yeah. And I think it's off of the journey too. We talked about before waiting seasons, but sometimes waiting seasons are your biggest answered prayers because not only do you learn so much in that time period, like the Lord is building you up for what he has for you. And like you learn so much more than you realize in your waiting seasons. And I know sometimes we often get discouraged. I mean, I know I do when like I'm praying to the Lord, like asking for an answer. He doesn't give it to me right off the bat. I'm like, why? But I know like I have to trust him and have faith in him that he's going to show me why along the way and in my waiting season. It's so important that we pay attention and, everything is for his purpose and everything has reason, even your waiting seasons. And we just have to keep remembering that it's his plan and it's his timing, not ours.
Yeah. And it goes both ways because it's like, if something's wrong, you want to put God back up in the driver's seat. And you're like, I need you to take care of this for me. And you just expect him, like, it's almost like a whistle. Like you're just calling him and you're like, I need you here right now to take care of me. But you're not living out on a day-to-day basis what would reflect that you, one, believe in the Lord, or two, that it's building your relationship with him. And you just want to re-put him back on the throne of your life whenever it's crisis time. But he needs to be there all the time. And is he going to come when you call? Yeah, he is. But it's not doing you to the greatest service because you could have such a better relationship with him and you could just talk to him and you wouldn't have to use those like emergency calls as much. I feel like most of the time those emergency calls are because you've sinned and you've done something and you've taken the lazy way out or you've not tried to do things to your full capability. And so if you have more of a relationship with him, you're going to be better all the time.
Yeah. And sometimes those emergency calls are the Lord just trying to get you to snap out of it and wake back up.
Yeah.
And if you don't turn from your ways, you're going to keep having those emergency calls when all in all, you could have stopped it at the front and you just had a relationship with Jesus and, turned your life around instead of hitting every single bump in the road because you call on him one time when you're in the middle of an emergency instead of just having him every day.
Because the second it's fixed, we want to go back to our ways. And we're like, no, I'm the ruler of my life. And I'll go to church on Sundays, but I'm still going to listen to what I want to listen to. I'm going to talk to who I want to talk to. I'm going to tell people that that's okay to do, even though it contradicts the Bible. I'm going to do all of these things because it's worldly and you want to eat your cake and get it too. Like you want to be able to have things of this world and you want to be able to have a close relationship with God, but it doesn't work because you're going to feel dirty when you come to God if you have those things of the world inside you.
Yeah. And not to say that he won't forgive them, but it's a lot easier. Like we always say, it's a lot easier to, dig yourself out of a 2 centimeter hole rather than a 12-foot hole. Like
Right.
it's a lot easier to climb over a 2-foot wall rather than it is a 20-feet wall. So like you just have to really not have God in your back pocket when you need him, but have him beside you all day, every day, because that's what's going to be the most beneficial of your life.
There was something that really put it into perspective for me, because the guy was explaining that it was something that he had told his kid he couldn't do. Like he was like, no, you can't go outside and play because this could hurt you. And the kid was like, I don't want to go play. I don't understand. But he was like, okay. And then the second the dad left the room, he snuck out and he went outside and he ended up like falling off the tree or getting hurt or whatever it was. And it was like, in that moment, the father knew he messed up. The father knew the kid messed up, and the kid knew the kid messed up.
Yeah.
But nobody was worried about that, because the father was just worried about running to his kid and making sure he was okay.
Yeah.
And that's how God is. Like, he knows you messed up. You know you messed up, but he's still going to come check on you, and he's still going to run to you every single time that you need him.
Yeah. It's just so important to always put your trust and faith in the Lord, even though we mess up every single day. And like sometimes we are guilty of just having God in our back pocket, like, and pulling him out like a little
Like
elf
a genie or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard, but you really have to change your ways and the ways of thinking, especially just because he is with you everywhere you go. Like we need to start thinking him more of, not worldly, but like we need to start thinking more that he's not just in a spiritual realm. He's with us like all the time. And it's just so good that I guess it's just so good that we have the knowledge that we have, but we need to use it. Like we have so much knowledge, but we don't apply it to our everyday lives because, we're sinful and we want the things of this world. We want to live halfway in, halfway out. We want to straddle the fence. And we can't do that if we want to live all in with the Lord. So yeah.
Well, we're still really excited for these next 2 weeks, and we hope that we've shared a little bit with you guys about how to be a good friend and how to be a loyal person and loyal to the Lord, even when it's tough. You have to stick it out, and you have to go through those hard battles so that you can pass the test, because the test is worth more percent than participation in the beginning. The little cheat answers don't count.
Yeah. You have to take him in. That's the whole picture. But, Ruth is such a great story, and it's just such a great reminder of how we can live our daily lives and how we know God will always show up, because not only did he show up 1,000 years ago, he shows up still today. And we just always have to remember that. This also is a little Easter egg into our next season. So just get excited. Because we only have 2 more weeks of the 20, or I guess it's 42 days that we talked about, but we only have 2 more weeks left of that. We're going to keep on trucking. But after these next 2 weeks, we have someone that's getting married. And so we will be going on a short break again. And then we should be back in October. But we're so excited for the next season, and we just cannot wait to share it with y'all.
We've been waiting on this one for a while.
Yes, we knew about this one before we knew about this. We've been waiting on that one for a while. But if you have any guesses on when it's going to be, you can always reach out, send it. We're so excited. We'll be posting teasers and trailers and things too. So we love you guys always, and never forget,
you're more precious than rubies.
Bye.